Hi, my name is Gerhard Schwander and welcome to Selling Power TV. Today we have the great pleasure of meeting with Jeff Seeley. He's CEO and owner of Karoo International. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Gerhard. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about leadership.
Oh, this is the most exciting thing that I do anymore.
Okay, let me start with a question. If leadership was a sound, how would it sound?
That's a great question. I think it would sound like a great jazz band, a quartet or a trio.
More like a riff? Not like a symphony?
I think, no, not like a symphony, because that's very structured and very organized. A great jazz band, or even a great rock and roll band. And you look at, I've had the pleasure of getting to know a couple people pretty well who are, one guy's in a pretty famous band, the Rolling Stones. And I get a chance to talk to them. And it's really the ability to work off of each other.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing.
Have you ever interviewed a director of an orchestra?
I have not. I actually interviewed Yo-Yo Ma, who obviously is the greatest cellist of our time, and very powerful interview in terms of, and we talked about leadership because I was really interested in where he was going with some of this.
Yeah, what's interesting with a conductor, the minute you do something, then the musicians respond instantly. So it's almost like driving a train. And you got to be aware of what you're doing.
Yes.
And you always got to be a step ahead of them. So I think it's a good leadership metaphor. What's yours?
Mine is, like I said, mine for me is really more the how do you get people to collaborate and play off of each other.
Okay.
And as we look at, and again, I'll use your analogy of a symphony. A symphony is very organized. Each person has their part, and it is very much a director-driven process. Whereas if you look at leadership, and that's how we consumed leadership and managership for the longest time, but you look at our new generations of people and employees, they don't consume leadership that way. They consume it very differently. And so their ability, somebody has to keep time. And if you think about the great rock and roll bands, people always think about, well, what's in their ear? And it's kind of funny because it's not somebody, it's not them hearing themselves. It's actually a beat measure. So somebody isn't tapping their foot because they're hearing in their ear to keep the beat and make sure everything starts. They're hearing instruction, okay, we're gonna play this in G or B or C. Those are all collaborative things. And I think leadership going forward, I know leadership going forward is really gonna have to be more about collaboration with your team and letting your team consume leadership how they want to, not how you want them to.
Well, I would say we could distinguish between function and structure of leadership, and function is collaboration. Is orchestration, whereas the structure of leadership has more to do with the vision and the strategy.
Absolutely, and that is critical of how to communicate a strategy or a vision of what the organization is. And it becomes this double-edged sword sometimes, because the greatest strategy in the world, poorly executed, will fail miserably. A very bad strategy, and we've seen them in the marketplace, executed to perfection, has an opportunity to be very successful. The reality is that you have to have both, and that's the delicate balance. Before, vision and leadership were all about, here's the vision, here's the leadership, and here's how we're going to do this. And now we've got a whole group of new employees coming in the marketplace who consume that very differently. They want it very differently. They want to be connected to it, and it's got to have meaning. And the number of visions and strategies, the size of them is going to go down dramatically, but the intensity of it's going to go up. People are going to be able to connect to it.
But isn't it true that as a company grows, it grows more layers of leaders, and then the top layer gets watered down by 20% at this level, and another 20, and another 20, so that the cascading dilution effect takes place, where then people at the bottom really don't have a clear sense of why they're there.
Oh, it's absolutely true. When you look at this cascaded leadership process, it's really not cascading, because basically what happens is each person is open to interpretation of how they interpret what it means to them. So when you're down at the lower end, if you're thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you're like air, breathe, food, shelter, you're not really getting the greater purpose. Why are we doing this? And that's where more in-tuned leaders really understand how to break down that cascade waterfall and go and make it a holistic approach. And that becomes a culture. And you look at some of the great startups that have horrible cultures, and you look at some startups that are very successful that have great cultures because everyone feels connected to the greater good. And we're sitting here in San Francisco, and I just think of all the trials and tribulations inside of Uber, which was a great startup, but basically was run like GE was run for years and horribly ineffective. And those kinds of things are going to have to stop as we continue to bring in this new set of leaders.
We are going to continue our conversation with Jeff Lee. We are going to continue our conversation with Jeff Seeley about leadership tomorrow, where we dive into the elements that make a good leader in sales. Thank you.
Thank you.